Alright, I finished Tomorrow Never Dies on PS1, and I had to stop myself from playing it for a bit because it barely lasts a few hours. You could pick it up from Blockbuster on a Friday night and have it wrapped up before the weekend is halfway done. The first mission throws us straight into things after M's intro video. It has nothing to do with the movie at all and sets expectations for the rest of the game. I came into this like, oh yes, I am Bond. I am invincible! I left it thinking, yeah, okay, so movie plot armor doesn't exist in this game. I found out multiple times that it is incredibly easy to die in this game when it felt like things were going well. For me, this first mission was a whole lot of fumbling around with the controls, getting used to the sluggish movement, getting stuck on doors, getting lost, and backtracking. Once I finally figured out the objective, we got this in-engine cutscene of a jet blowing up the satellite we laser painted. After that was a big action section of having to gun down what felt like 100 plus people coming out of a chopper so we could get an access card off of one of them. That led us to this weird nothing cutscene of us putting on some skis and going for a trip down the mountain, a little segment I like to call pointless padding. If it wasn't for these segments, some missions would be over in just a few minutes, which given this entire game only has 10, it doesn't exactly bode well. Anyway, the skiing bit was more interesting than this being a cutscene, I suppose. You just had to navigate your way down a mountain with nothing but your ski poles to defend yourself with. The second mission feels familiar if you watch the movie, as it's basically the prequel to how the movie started. It was, however, pretty boring right up until we got told a missile is on the way to blow us all up, including some nukes strapped to a jet, so you know what we've got to do. We get given 2 minutes to fight through a massive horde of enemies to find a cockpit key to the jet, and a few attempts later, I finally managed to get inside it. Now we kind of reenact the jet taking off sequence from the movie, clearing out some armoured vehicles using the jet's turrets as it spins around, and then it cuts to movie footage so I can't show you the rest. We got a cool PS1 adapted intro sequence as well, basically what the movie did with the music and credits, but the credits had been swapped for the developers of the game. For some reason, in Mission 3 they decided to turn the party scene into a weird sneaking in around the back action mission, which then eventually lines up with the capture portion from the movie. It took me way too long to actually complete this mission as well, it's super long. This game not having checkpoints definitely contributed to that. I tried to actually do this mission stealthily, but after the third or fourth attempt at failing to do so, I gave up on that plan. I don't think it even mattered anyway. After I got captured, I felt like an idiot because it took me way too long to notice my gun on the table, so I stood mashing buttons hoping James would do a karate move on the guy shooting me point blank with an assault rifle. Not too surprisingly, there were a lot of enemies to deal with as we blew things up and escaped, and I was very glad I found an extra life during this sequence. The multiple failures at this level meant that the 8 minutes on the level stat screen looked really wrong. The fourth mission was very similar to the one we just did, some sneaking around with a few scripted death sequences. You shoot people a level up from you and they fall into the printing machines like that one guy did in the movie. After collecting a few items, using a fingerprint scanner, and solving a mini puzzle, it was time to leave, almost uninterrupted this time. Mission 5 gets us our first boss of the game about halfway through it. Nothing really special about this mission up until that point though. We're in a hotel, we blast our way through the guards, encounter a very rude bartender that tries to kill us, instead of serving us a drink, and then we get to the lady from Mission 3, Paris, waiting for us. The guy they sent to murder her acts as our first boss. Before that though, I did have this moment right at the start of the mission that made me chuckle. The boss man was quite difficult to deal with going in blind. He had some pretty heavily damaging attacks and I had no medkits. He killed me right as one of his goons dropped one for me, so I rage quit for the night. I figured out his attacks by the third attempt, and then we had a dreaded 90s escort the clueless NPC out of the hotel section. I really should have done this the first time, but she decided to stand between the end of my gun and the enemy I was trying to deal with. That got her killed and she went flying off the screen in a very dramatic fashion. Unfortunately, despite leaving the hotel in the car, we didn't get to do the set piece from the movie, where we remotely controlled the car and caused chaos in the parking lot. The developers had other ideas for a car mission. We diverged from the movie plot here, and go for a weird tangent of heading to the Swiss Alps in our car. For some reason Q is just chilling in his shed on the side of the road with a new one for us after the hotel escape. For some reason we don't start in the car though. We have to fight our way through some enemies before we pick it up. I don't know why. After that, it's one of those chase sequences where we hunt down a convoy, dodging roadworks and bulldozers along the way. Once we reach them, we have to then just blow them up. I struggled with that for a bit, mostly because the missiles seemed to phase through the road if it reached an incline, so you had to wait for the perfectly flat straight bits of road to deal with them. Somehow I lost the entire convoy on the second attempt at this, and I don't know what I did differently in the third attempt, but it worked. The game takes us to a ski resort in Japan for the next mission, which I definitely don't remember from the movie. It gave us some more skiing and then the usual guard killing as we moved our way through the complex. Here we meet boss number 2 of the game, who introduces the mechanic of gas grenades, which are absolutely lethal. I found that one out the hard way, but did manage to beat him the first time. I was really glad I did too, because this was one of the longest missions in the game at 15 minutes. We mostly join back up with the movie plot now, as we're on top of the Carver building in China. They ramped up the usual action sequence for this one. Health and armor was scarce, and the enemies seemed more powerful and came in pairs. Once I finally found the door for the key I picked up, we transitioned into a classic wait a minute cutscene as we got pistol whipped around the back of the head. Oh hey look, is that part of the movie? Well, time to escape again. That is after I've collected a data disk on the way out, of course. It wasn't an easy escape either. The same intensity from the start of the mission was here, and then I couldn't figure out how to end the mission after I'd killed everyone. I wandered around for a bit, and then I realised in the movie they jumped out of a window, so as a last gasp effort, I shot a random massive window, and it actually worked! I'm already on to the penultimate mission now. I told you this was a short game. For this one we got to change the pace, as we're not in control of Bond for this one. Wei Lin steps in as we explore a Chinese market district. I'm so glad she controls the exact same way Bond did though. Having to relearn how her character works on the penultimate mission would have been so frustrating. Especially because this mission is both long and frustrating without that, and includes 2 boss battles, both of which were quite explosive. This level liked to ambush you a lot whilst also providing you an alarming amount of armor and ammo, but not medpacks. I was lucky to find a bonus stash of armor, ammo, and an extra life before reaching the first boss. I think without this I wouldn't have made it through. This boss fight wasn't too difficult once I figured out his pattern, but his rocket launcher obviously did big damage. After a few attempts, it was mine to play with now. The start of this mission has multiple paths blocked by barricades and massive mounted turrets, turning it into a classic get the key and do some backtracking mission. Only in this instance, the rocket launcher is the key. It gets some heavy use from this point forward, but even with it getting through the barricades easily, the preceding ambushes proved to be tough. I kept getting stuck on the debris or accidentally shooting at the remains of the barricades instead of the enemies. This led us on to the next boss, a helicopter. I had to give up for the night after multiple tries at that one. Before I started my next attempt, I got teased with a nice big stash of health, ammo, and armor that I spotted before but couldn't get to. It was really well hidden, and I eventually found that blowing up a suspicious piece of wall was how to get there. With that in hand, and after almost 1 hour at this one level, I went absolutely berserk against that damn chopper. I spammed rockets at it like there was no tomorrow, and finally blew it up, or more accurately, watched it pop out of existence. A few more enemies to deal with, which almost killed me, and then I had to play a guess the button combination on a computer to finish the level. We're on to the final level now, and back in control of Mr. Bond. We'll be done with that little Blockbuster rental game before Saturday is even over at this rate. This mission brings us back in line with the movie and basically reenacts that entire sequence on the stealth boat, but the final boss isn't quite what the movie did. There's a lot of cutscenes in this one, along with 2 bosses waiting for us. The start of the mission is actually fairly quiet, not too many enemies to deal with as they don't know we exist at this point. First objective done, and alright, let's go save Miss Lin then I guess. Now everyone knows we're here, damn it! Getting to her meant encountering the first boss of the level, and I had 0 lives to my name. Luckily, the room before the boss gave us a supply of ammo, armor, medpacks, and an extra life. Good job on all, because this boss has a very scary looking grenade launcher. To my surprise, I dispatched of him fairly quickly and got Wei Lin out of her laser-fortified cell. She then runs off on her own to go do what she should have done earlier. The next step for us was to backtrack a bit, whilst clearing some stragglers and stopping the missile launch. To no surprise to anyone, Carver, the final boss, wanted to chat with us before he ran off and hid, and we had to go and hunt him down. Getting back out of this lower level was a pain with enemies everywhere. I burned through a few lives and so much armor trying to do so. After gunning down a boatload of enemies, we got the missing missile launcher key we needed and continued our pursuit of Carver. We were going very movie-esque now with all the explosions going off as I fought my way through some kind of cargo area and found him in a dead-end room, ready to become our final boss fight. I figured this would be a super easy fight, what with having the grenade launcher from the first boss fight in our arsenal. My first attempt at this felt like it was going well right up until the point it wasn't. Carver was a tank and his damage dealt quickly outpaced what I was doing to him. For my second attempt, I played it much smarter, using the environment to my advantage instead of just standing in the same room as him. I had 0 lives left, but at least plenty of medpacks to spam. I spammed them like there was no tomorrow, and once his health was below 50, I hit him with a few grenade launcher shots. They seemingly did no better than the assault rifle. That was until I blasted him in the face point blank, and that wiped off all his health in one go. Final boss dealt with, let's get out of here within the time limit before we also get blown up. I swear to God, if I die now... Getting back to the missile launch panel and stopping that was the easy part. I was quite annoyed we had to sit and watch the cutscene whilst the clock continued ticking down though. I just had 3 medpacks remaining and the enemies were out in pairs again trying to gun me down. I was in such a rush by this point, no time to stop with that clock ticking. A few medpacks later, and an almost instant death due to an explosive barrel trap, and we are out of here.
Let's go.
Mission complete. Game complete. Now for the big final cutscene. Oh, we don't get one. Damn it. This was the longest and most difficult mission in the game by far, however it seemed a fair difficulty for it being the final one. Well, we've already finished this game. Plenty of time to spare before the rental is due back Monday morning. If you get bored and want to play some more, you can go through it again on a higher difficulty, but that's really all there was to this game. They didn't even add multiplayer to it for some reason. No multiplayer. You've got the N64 rocking GoldenEye 64, where multiplayer arguably defines it, and Bond's first outing on the PS1 doesn't even have it? What a strange decision. Honestly, I don't even feel like I want to replay this one, even on a higher difficulty. And that is why I think this was the perfect rental game back in the day. It gave you a nice weekend adventure, and left you with plenty left over in your wallet to buy the next game you wanted. I guess I'll go do that now. In the meantime, let me know in the comments if you played this game when it originally came out.